Brand Innovators, but the industry. I personally came from sports. I was used to being in fantasy hockey leagues and watching games for a living. And marketing in sports is a little bit different. So coming from that space into Brand Innovators was really cool. And to see that Brand Innovators from the start cared about gender equality and made this a top priority. I think going on 7 or 8 years now. It meant a lot to me, and I think it means a lot to everyone in our community too. We often find that it's one of our most popular themes for speakers. I would say I'm unique at Brand Innovators, working on both sides of the fence. I work with not only our partners on their success, but also with our community, our marketing community, in particular in Atlanta, where I get to offer opportunities to amazing marketers, everyone from Delta to Home Depot, Porsche. I mean, you name it, we have the best brands in Atlanta. Sorry, any other market, we have the best. But this is definitely a topic that resonates with our community members, not only just in Atlanta, but in all of our markets. Last year, we made an effort to make this theme go nationwide. So we actually brought it to New York, we brought it to San Francisco, we brought it to Dallas, and made it a regular event, just like, our marketing innovation days or our future of media days. And that was a lot of fun. But what's even more fun is getting to do this now in front of everyone for the past 6 months. We get to take all these amazing speakers, feature them, globally, right? You can tune into Brand Innovators from anywhere. One thing that's really cool, and if you've been following along over the past 6 months, maybe new to you, is that we are now streaming live on YouTube, which means you guys can watch this anytime, anywhere. If somebody, wanted to tune in today and couldn't, they absolutely can. You can forward them the URL right now. They can register. But in the event that they just can't join right now, you can also share the YouTube link. So if you go to YouTube now and subscribe to our channel, you'll get all of the notifications. It'll tell you exactly when these events are starting, and you can watch anything on demand. So I kind of jumped ahead a little bit there. I was excited about YouTube, but before we get started with the program, it's a stellar lineup. As always with this theme, to be honest, want to familiarize you with the Cisco WebEx platform if this is your first time joining us. We have a Google Chrome extension that we definitely recommend you download. Takes just a minute. Once you do it once, you don't have to do it again. Highly recommended. Another thing is to go ahead and set your screen to grid view. You can do that by going up to the top center of the screen right now, and you'll see a round button where you can go ahead and set that up to grid view so that you can see both of the speakers side by side, no toggling back and forth. I definitely think that's the easiest way to watch this. You can use the Q&A widget. It's down on your bottom right. If it doesn't pop up, there's 3 little buttons. You can click those and the widget it'll appear. Go ahead and send questions. If things come to you, you have questions about something that's said, or you're curious about something else that wasn't mentioned, you can feel free to submit those in real time, and we'll answer them as soon as they come in. Our chats are typically 30 minutes length and then a 10-minute Q&A at the end. Anything that we don't answer there, feel free to shoot us a note on social media. We're very active. Our head of marketing, Meg, is amazing. She reposts and posts in real time. So shoot her a note, use hashtag BI Livecast. Last but not least, we want to thank our awesome partner, Cisco WebEx. They're our official technology partner powering today's program. So we're going to watch a quick video.
From the start. No, today. This is collaboration without compromise.
Awesome. Thanks, Vishal. He's our incredible producer. If you guys have been to any Brand Innovators event, you've met Vishal. He went from, I think, going to like 100 events a year to producing virtually. So he's getting a little break from travel, but special thanks to him. And I got to shout out Isabel, one of the newer members on our team. She came on, she has been rocking from the start. If you're a speaker at any of our virtual events, you've talked to her, she gets you all set up, make sure you're good to go with your AV. So special shout out to her as well. So without further ado, I would love to bring our first live cast to the stage. I'm very, very excited to welcome these two speakers here today. We have Andrea Hochling. She's a VP of Global Brand Marketing and Management at EA. And we have Justine Armar. She's the Chief Creative Officer at Grey New York. And they're popping in. Hey, Justine.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Justine and Andrea. Okay, sorry, it's my first time using this app. So, all right.
Great.
Let's start.
Hi.
Let's get.
Yeah. Hi, Andrea. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I will go away now and let you guys have your chat, and I'll pop back in towards the end.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us. Yeah. Hi, Andrea. Here we are. Hello. We sort of set ourselves, and we had a little bit of a pre-chat yesterday, but we haven't actually met before this. But we realized that our worlds have been sort of almost circling around each other. So it's a miracle that we haven't already met prior to this. But I'm really fascinated by the job that you're occupying and how you're leading. So because we sort of talked about this a bit yesterday. Being a woman in leadership, leading an innovative team in a category where you are definitely in the minority, I think it really breeds a special kind of resilience and tenacity. And, that maybe, I don't know, it might set you up a little bit to navigate the pressures and the sort of uncertainties of leading a team through COVID. So I'm curious, well, firstly, I'd love to hear, tell us all about your current role at EA, and then also how your team has been impacted by COVID.
Sure. Yeah, great. Pleasure to connect with all of you guys. Welcome to my bedroom, which is also my office, and also the fitness center and everything else that all of us are now dealing with as people that work from home, our new reality. But I'm great to be with you guys today, and looking forward to this. Thank you for asking. I love my job. I have probably, I think, one of the best jobs I've ever had in my career to date. And what I get to do every day is create, develop, and deliver fun and play. And not many people get to say their career centers around the idea of play, which is such a fundamental and important part of our lives. And what my role really means when I say I get to work and play every day is I'm responsible for what we call global brand management and marketing, electronic arts. And I do that for our portfolio of games. My portfolio is across the non-sports games. So I'm sure for those of you who play games, you can imagine the types of things that come under that, and we'll talk about some of those, I'm sure. But global brand management, for those of you who are familiar or not, is really, I like to call it the GM of the business. We're responsible for sort of the end-to-end experience of both the development of a product all the way through the point of purchase and sort of what we call live services. And so it's the full spectrum of managing the product, the business of it, the distribution of it, what the key features need to be, how we bring it to market, how we develop a relationship with the consumer through both the product and the way we speak to them in the market. So it's a sort of a pretty rich opportunity that sort of spans the entire process of bringing something to market, which I happen to love. And, to the second part of your question, what has that meant and how have we been impacted by COVID? Gosh, it has been a really interesting journey. The Bay Area was one of the faster responders. We began working from home in very early part of March. And so we probably had about a 2 to 3 week head start from some of the rest of the country. We came into this, I think, with such a positive spirit, like probably almost everyone did. You know, the adrenaline was high. It was like, we can do this. And immediately, I think we pivoted to like this, like, awesome, we've got this, to a very so sort of the next phase of it, which is like overwhelming Zoom fatigue. Like, oh my gosh. I'd like to think we found a rhythm. We really haven't. And I think it's all about to get disrupted again as kids, you know, don't go back to school this year. So it's been an interesting journey. For the things that we planned and we were sort of in execution mode on, I think we really been nailing them. I think we're finding a harder turn on some of the featuring.
Yeah, I think everyone looks at their sort of 2020, you know, decks, all their sort of kickoff, you know, 2020 is our year, and it's hard not to look back at those, like, kind of, you know, those, you know, the first meeting that you have with your team at the beginning of the year, you're trying to get everybody excited about the year that's coming. And hard not to look back on it and laugh at like how thoroughly the year it's been such a reckoning. But and to, you know, and in adding to that, it would be, you know, remiss of us not to talk about how the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, really was able to kind of have a real surge in this moment too. So curious, you know, what are EA's, I know you were already doing a lot of work in the diversity space already, but, you know, how, what are your efforts in diversity, and how is your team, you know, working to create more inclusive brands in the portfolio?
Yeah, great question. You know, I would say our audience is the audience of gamers and people that play games is quite diverse, and it's quite broad. And we know that, and we own that we need to speak to our players, and we need to speak to all of them. And so we are very focused on that in how we represent characters inside of our games and how we build out inclusive experiences for diversity broadly, you know, not just race and color, but really thinking about gamers that have different accessibility options and language options. But, you know, I think that put a mirror on the industry, the gaming industry as a whole is not, for those that work in it, it's not as diverse. Our developers, our business teams aren't as representative as our player base is, and we know we have work to do here. You know, we, as we address Black Lives Matter, we began to address it as a company. We've taken a couple of actions, and certainly I'm proud of the efforts we've taken so far. We did match our commitments in words with sizable donations, as well as a number of actions that we've taken internally, both for our employees and how we operate as a business, but also through the way we develop our products. You know, some of the things that I've participated in that have been really powerful have been more cultural to how we operate as a business. And so we have hosted community conversations where members of our employee resource groups and have shared very personal experiences with us about what it's like to grow up as a Black or African American community member and the unique ways that they've had to navigate being Black. And they shared very personal stories with the organization, very vulnerable stories, which I think really was very powerful for all of us to hear. We celebrated Juneteenth as a company holiday, which wasn't a day off, but instead it was a day of learning and listening with outside speakers. And we sort of capped the day with a drop the beat. We called it drop the beat dance party, where we were all on Zoom and we were all dancing, and we had DJs come in who played, you know, culturally inspired music and things like that. And so we're really on a mission to learn and grow and really lift up the voices of all of our employees and our future employees. And we also know we need to deliver that more thoroughly in our products. The Sims is a great example of one of our brands where one of the brands that I run, where diversity and inclusion and representation is critically important and a fundamental value of our game. So there's a number of examples that I could share of efforts that we're doing, but I think one most specifically to your question on Black Lives Matter, I don't know how many people on this call play The Sims. It's a life simulation game where you get to create characters, tell stories, build worlds. And in that, as you create your sim character, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the Black and African American community over the years that our skin tones have looked ashy and they haven't had as many choices. And that when they apply makeup onto their sim, the color has looked off, or it's looked like paint rather than authentic makeup. And so one of the things that we recently did this June is we partnered with MAC, and who is, a standout in terms of inclusivity and diversity in makeup, and partnered with them to bring color palettes and tones into our game, and to really sort of make sure we were checking how it looked and how it came across with players. We're also working on skin tones right now and the perception of natural hair in the game. So we have work to do.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Can we actually, while we're on that topic, can we talk about, I'm really curious, so how else has The Sims become more inclusive and an outlet for women to express themselves creatively? I'd love to hear more about the other things that you've been doing for women in the game.
Yeah, I mean, The Sims is really, I like to call it a little bit of a unicorn in the gaming industry. It is our audience is younger. We have about our core audience is about 12 to 25. So, and many of them come in at a very young age and stay for a really long time, which is amazing. It just speaks to sort of the stickiness in the brand and the outlet for powerful creativity. But, I think there's been a couple of efforts that we've done over the years. Certainly we've always wanted The Sims to be a place where you could authentically express your truest self, the life you want to live, the life you wish you could live, the life that, both your wildest dreams, your deepest fears, and your everyday. And so over time, we've released a ton of content packs that are both fantastical and realistic. But within that, it's been important for us to tell the stories of every day and the stories that surround our community. To your question, actually, I think our audience is about 70% female, which goes back to it being a little bit of a unicorn. But we certainly don't target females. We just know that it's a sort of really amazing place for them to come into, and a fun game for them to play. I think some of the things that we've done to keep it more inclusive over the years, last year we introduced all of the, during Pride, we introduced all of the Pride flags. And we also last year introduced the hijab into the game so that that community could represent themselves authentically in how they dressed. And we worked with fashion consultants that were familiar with modern hijabs to make sure that we were doing right by that. We partnered with, on a totally opposite end of the spectrum, we partnered with Moschino last year and brought in a high-end fashion collection into the game. So we're constantly looking for ways to connect with our audience and bring sort of the real world and the aspirational world together.
So interesting. And so when you think about women's sort of complex and rich inner lives, that they can, like the opportunity in gaming for women is it's just so interesting, isn't it? I wanted to ask you this question about, there was a Google Nico Partners report that said that the idea of gaming as male-dominated market is antiquated. I'm sure you would support this, as women's gameplay and spending rise. So what do you think is the future of women's interest in gaming? Curious to
Yeah,
hear
well,
your
I
predictions.
definitely agree with the reports. I definitely agree. I mean, I think The Sims is a great example. But as we look across our portfolio of games at Electronic Arts, I think most are surprised to hear that in some of our more core games, we have upwards of 40% females who are playing. So I do think that sort of the perception that existed that predates sort of this moment of the gamer in the hoodie in the basement has really gone. I mean, I like to think that the addressable audience for gaming is everyone. I love to share the story of playing Words with Friends with my grandma as a way to keep us connected, and you hear lots of stories like that. And so I think that there's a bright future. I think that gaming has surpassed any other form of entertainment now. It's greater than movies, and it's greater than television content. It's bigger than Netflix. And so you have to imagine for it to continue to grow, and for it people have to find an open space for them to play and have fun. Yeah.
Especially if we are here and having these two-dimensional lives that we're all kind of stuck in, right? It's like to see an escape portal into a safe and socially distant escape portal into a different world. Hey, I wanted to ask you about, your thoughts on creativity. And, everyone has their own sort of personal definition of that word. So I want to hear from you, like, what does that word mean to you?
Yeah, probably most simply for me, it's about living in a mindset of possibility. It's sort of that art brought to life when you allow yourself to ask the question, what if? And so I really think it is, creativity is that mindset of possibility, how we can versus why we can't.
Yeah, I love that. It's a kind of a growth mindset, kind of open to whatever's coming your way, the unpredictable, and working with it, rather than having a fixed idea of how things need to be. Yeah, it's really interesting.
My team teaches me a lot. They say, I get really irritated when someone starts from a place of no. And they always say, you always say yes and I said, I know it's so annoying, but I really so mean it. It's like, how can we versus why can't we? Like, I want to know how we could.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. You have to be like, stating the dream is the only way that you sort of move toward the dream. So yeah, that's awesome. Okay, another one. You mentioned in a recent interview that as a brand leader, you are most interested in expanding the reach and affinity of your brands through both small curated opportunities and also the big marketable things. Is there a piece of work that you've done recently that you would say you're like most proud of, whether it's a big thing or a small thing?
Yeah, actually there is. I'm a pretty big believer that grabbing the longest straw doesn't always mean, that's where you get the biggest credit. And I really do believe that passion projects can have material impact. And so one of the things that I most recently worked on was very much a passion project. If you look at it in terms of revenue contribution to Electronic Arts, it's probably the smallest for the year, but maybe the most important in terms of reputation and relationship that we will have. And I do believe that relationships trump transactions all day long. And so the project was, I led the project of a remaster of a 25-year-old game and brand called Command and Conquer. And for those of you who are not familiar, this is a little bit more of a core game, but it's a real-time strategy game, a PC-based game. And for context, we had attempted to launch a mobile game for the CNC franchise about a year and a half ago. And without spilling all the details, I'll just say it was a pretty big fail. And our franchise fans were so angry with us, not only because of the choices we made in the game development, but the fact that we took a PC game and put it on mobile. Mobile and PC fans, like, they just don't cross near as much as we might think that they would. So the remaster project was all about serving the fan. And it really was a love letter to our fan base. And we did something really different. We called it Project 180. And what it meant in that is we gave fans a very open and transparent line to us through each phase of development. And so normally we show you a game when we're ready to show you a game. And we don't open up sort of the books and show you all of the warts and sort of all of the uglier phases of development or all of the mistakes we're making along the way. But in this instance, we did, and we showed fans how we were progressing. We asked for their input. We earned their trust, that we allowed them to contribute. And, they helped us. They helped us with source code. They helped us with the soundtrack. They helped us with the key art. And it was really a fan-led, fan-contributed project, which we just launched a couple of months ago in June. And it was so well received because we brought them along the journey with us. And, I think that at the end, as we launched it, we also left fans with a really important gift. And we left them the gift of the source code. We don't know if we'll make another Command and Conquer game, but we know they earned our trust in the development process just as much as we earned theirs. And so we gave them the code so that they can mod the game to their heart's content and keep the franchise alive for years to come. And so that was a really powerful passion project.
That is super cool. And would you say that you look for inspiration regularly, like with, to the fans for your creative inspiration? Tell me a bit more about your team's usual creative process.
Yeah, I think that the fan base and players are a really important component of our development process. Their opinions matter so much, and we spend a lot of time in upfront insights and ongoing user experience testing and things like that. Those are all very much a part of our creative process. But I think that, there's probably two things. One is there's so much data that exists out there in gaming. Literally, because it's an online connected experience, there's a lot that we have to lean on, which sometimes can trump creativity a little bit. Sometimes you're so overwhelmed with the amount of data that you have that you lose your creativity. And so, there is a little bit of a tension there where we have to continue to focus on what we believe versus what we see. But I think that more importantly, where I'm most focused creatively and thinking about the future. The future player of our games, is growing up in a materially different way. I think about my son and probably all of us who have children on this call. Digital creation, they've had a digital self since the moment they were born.
Yeah,
and
it's really part of their nature.
Yeah, and so we really have to think future forward about what the type of connected experience, how they're going, what level of autonomy they're going to want in their gameplay moving forward. And so I'm very focused now on futuring, inviting in tastemakers and trendsetters and futurists to help us, because there aren't comps in the market that we can look at today if we want to meet the market in 10 years. Yeah.
There's a question that one of the attendees has asked here. Where are you learning best practices for developing better customer relationships through digital touchpoints? Is it email, social media, apps? Where are you getting your information?
Everywhere. I think that, most certainly we are not above failing. We never want to fail, but that's when we probably get our best lessons. But I think that, what we really believe in, and the Command and Conquer project was a great example of it, is highly transparent relationships, ongoing conversations. I think the best brands know how to build relationships, whether that is through email, whether that is through social media, but really the best brands are also the best listeners. And so I think that listening is as important, is the best way to learn.
Tell me, we haven't really talked too much about, sort of any like our gender issues, but I'm curious to hear some of the sort of challenges and barrier. We talked yesterday a little bit about how much of a minority you are as a woman in the gaming sector, but also, I want to know some of the challenges that you face, the barriers that you faced in your career as a woman in that sector, in leadership. And has this sort of moment that we're this year, has it made it any harder for you? Has it made it different in any way? How have you, how's your gender come into play as you've led a team through this? Lots of quite like a multi-tiered question.
Yeah. I'll try to thread through it. I think what's interesting is as I reflect on my career, I've actually been a minority as a female in a number of roles. Early in my career, I spent time at Fox Sports and ESPN, which were heavily male-dominated organizations, and now at Electronic Arts. And particularly as I've sort of risen into leadership roles, the pool of women or my female peers, that list has become smaller and smaller inside my organizations. And, I don't know if I have a great answer for how I've managed it, other than the fact that I haven't let it get in my way. I've never, I've been lucky. I was lucky to be raised with a lot of confidence. And I've always sort of believed in my right to be in a room. And some of you may have read some of my thinking on the 3 C's, which is really about having confidence, having curiosity, and being candid. And I think that sort of those 3 things have helped me assert my position in any room and in any room. But I think that your question on COVID is actually probably a pretty interesting one as I think about my role as a female leader today. I think that if you look around, that you're hard pressed to find a woman or a man, truthfully, that hasn't felt the weight of the increased responsibilities, and the forced work-life integration. And, in addition to my role as a leader for a team at work, I'm a leader and a role model for my 4-year-old son. I'm also the toilet scrubber and the short order cook and the dog walker. And, and I know we all can relate.
Inhumane, the fear is doing to us.
Yeah. I think that there's probably a couple of things that have really helped me. And the first is probably it's simple. It's really just talking to others, sharing experiences, relating, listening hard. I think that people want to be heard, and they don't necessarily want me to solve their problems, but they want to know that I truly hear them and and I think that that's powerful, particularly as a leader. And I know that I want to be heard when I speak to my boss. I want him to listen hard to me. I think that the other thing that's helped me a lot is setting my intentions and being very clear about them. So, setting my intentions for my team, setting my intentions for my boss, for those I work with, and making sure that that we're all on the same page. And then with that, I think that when you set the intention clearly, I think that driving to decision quickly is what is the net result of that. I think that working from home has been brutal for most people, and the work takes longer. And so the clearer I can be around my intention and the clearer I can be upfront in setting expectations, the faster I can help my team get to decisions and the more time they have to do the other things that are important to them or, the things that are important to me, like spending time with my son or my family. So I think that those are some keys that have really helped me as a leader.
Yeah, it's been obviously there's a lot of being written about female leadership and the countries in the world who have like survived or have responded well through COVID have been by and large been led by women leaders. And there's I guess there's a trap for women leaders as well if you don't have that sort of decisive direction. You can be like women think in webs, they think in systems, they see the bigger picture. It's really sometimes hard to get out of the sort of the seeing all of the things and like get to give people clarity on where they're head. So it's awesome that you've got that. You figured that piece out. I figured that piece out myself. There's a few other fun questions in here. Oh, actually, no, this one. You had said recently in an interview that you had always been prescriptive in your career about working for passion brands and brands that viewers and players can make an emotional connection with. If you could work for any brand in the world that's not the ones that you're currently working on, who would it be and why?
This one could get me into trouble,
Yeah, I know. I was like, it's a little funny, but not the ones that you're currently attached to.
Yeah, no, look, I've been really lucky. Not many people can say they've worked for some of the companies that I've been able to work with.
Yeah.
And I've been very intentional in my choice. I learned very early on that career success was earned by running to a job versus running from. I think so often we're like, get me out, this isn't working. And really it's about the intentional choice of where do you want to run to? And identifying some of the newer skill sets that you want to learn versus continuing to lean on the ones that, have gotten you to that point. But I think the question is a good one. And of course, I'm very happy where I am today. But I think that my answer for this one might surprise some of you. My husband's in real estate, and for all the time we spend at home these days, I'm recognizing more and more how important it is to really love the space that you live. And my side passion is interior design. And actually, the reason I'm in this room today is because we're actually renting right now while our house is, it unfortunately needed a structural remodel, but it is going through, so we're renting and it's going through a little bit of an overhaul. But I think that building out passion spaces for people in the homes that they live would be a really amazing passion choice for me in my future.
That makes perfect sense when you think about this, where you are with The Sims and the worlds that you get to create through that platform. Okay, I got some. If there are more questions from the attendees, please pop them in because we'll make sure that Andrew gets to answer them. I've got some other fun quick fire questions. How many unread emails are in your inbox?
I'm pretty good about reading them, so at least a quick skim. So probably no more than like 5 or 6 right now, but there's probably double that have urgent flags that need responses.
Yeah, I mean, you're either that type of person or you've got 35,000. I'm the same as you. I'm actually like an inbox zero by the end of the day person. My partner has an overwhelming number of unread emails. He just doesn't even bother. Okay, if you could do your job from anywhere, where would it be?
I would say Deer Valley. We can ski and snowboard in the winter and hike and bike in the summer.
Perfect. Okay, complete the sentence. I couldn't get through a COVID weekend without
wine.
Your idea of perfect happiness?
It's actually the opposite of where I would spend all my time if I could do my job from anywhere, which is an umbrella and the beach.
Amazing. What is your greatest extravagance?
So I used to say shoes because I believe, I don't have tons, but I believe in investing in quality, comfortable shoes. But today I would say probably Ugg slippers and have taken reign in my house. So
Yeah, I mean, what a ridiculous shoes are the most pointless thing to I'm a shoe investor myself, and I'm full of regrets. Actually, there's somebody, Giovanni has asked a question. On the subscription box services, what brands do you think are doing a great job at engaging customers?
ooh, that's a good question. I spend a lot of time at my current job working on our subscription, and I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure I have a great answer on this subscription box, but I do spend more time on thinking about loyalty programs and subscriptions that people are signing up for, like Netflix and like Spotify and those. I'll be honest, I think everybody's still trying to figure out their value proposition and what stickiness looks like long term. And I think that there's an interesting debate that's happening right now as some brands are thinking about what I learned a new term this week, niching down. Which means going into tighter, more niche audiences, while others are still focused on serving broad. At the end of the day, I don't know if I have an answer for you on the boxes itself, but I do think that those customers that are thinking about the value add versus the value are the ones that are set up for the long term.
We're going to get kicked out. I'm going to ask you one more fun question. What's your greatest achievement?
Oh, probably being a mom, demonstrating to my son every day that, through hard work and vision and determination, that I can do great things. And so can he.
You can. Well done to you. And thank you so much for the conversation. It was awesome.
Thank you. That was so good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. We hope you'll come back soon.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah, good. Well, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, a reminder that it's not too late to join. Make sure you share today's links with your friends and colleagues. For our next session, we're going to be joined by a very special guest and friend of the Brand Innovators family, Benji Bear. She is the Global Chief Marketing Officer of CBRE. Prior to joining CBRE in July 2019, she held a number of key positions at JP Morgan Chase, beginning as the firm's first Chief Marketing Officer for retirement. Benji then went on to build a new global product marketing team responsible for developing an investment content strategy and managing asset class team partnerships. This session will be moderated by our new friend, Paul Chenair, the head of sales at Bloomberg QuickTake, a part of Bloomberg LP. Welcome to the stage, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
All right. I'm not going to lie. We love all of our sessions. This session had a little extra internal Brand Innovators buzz because Benji is the amazing mother of Isabel, who I talked about earlier, who we just absolutely love. So thank you, Benji, for raising an awesome daughter.
Thank you. Truly my honor to be part of the session today, and glad that she's contributing in a positive way. It's a great platform. So thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you so much. And Paul, I know you've been around Brand Innovators for quite some time. We're excited to have you part of this in a virtual capacity today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I think my first exposure to Brand Innovators had to be 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago in Chicago. So yeah, it feels like a homecoming for me. So I'm happy to be here.
Hey, well, I'm gonna jet. I'll let you guys chat, and I'll come back in towards the end.
Great, thank you so much, Lauren. Hey, Benji.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you again. You're in a tiny little window, but I can see you barely. So I think Lauren did a great job of sharing your background. That's where we're going to start, and I think your resume speaks for itself. But I think the first thing I'd just love to share with the audience a little context about kind of like what your day to day looks like. What does a CMO, the world's biggest commercial real estate company, do? So I'd love if you could share just a few notes about that.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. It's interesting. Part of my reason for joining CBRE was because of the opportunity to really reset what marketing was and what it is at a global real estate firm. So right now I focused in the last year a lot on talent and structure and making sure we had the best talent around us, structured in the way to deliver value to our clients and value to our brokers and all of our client-facing professionals. So the days are pretty busy right now. It is day in and day out Zoom. We are pretty much 24/7. We have over 500 offices from New York, Dallas to Vietnam, Thailand, Middle East, etc. So we do lots of great calls. I had a call this morning with my colleague in Singapore. And probably later today, I'll be speaking to our team in LA. So a lot of strategy around brand, getting that all, established as we think about our way forward. And certainly in the last few months, heads down on what does this mean in a COVID environment? What does it mean as a marketer? And really, oh my gosh, what does it mean for a real estate company? When space is in the crosshairs, very much so, of everything that we're trying to manage through. So I have some great, I guess you could say, war stories about what that's been like.
I can imagine. Safe to assume the days fly by, but the weeks, or the days last forever, but the weeks fly by right now.
Yeah.
That's great. We'll come back to kind of, what you're working on strategically and some insights you have about the current predicament we find ourselves in. But, just to kind of focus a little bit on women in brand marketing to start. You've come up through two very male-dominated industries, finance and real estate. I can speak for finance, an industry that is really trying to redefine itself right now, really trying to make inroads. But what's it been like, kind of coming up as a woman, obviously being very successful in these two male-dominated fields?
It's probably ignorance is a good thing. So you sort of, I was someone who was brought up by some very strong parents and had great role models. And I was always told I can, accomplish whatever I wanted to accomplish. And I kind of ignored, I think I was ignorant, probably to some of the biases that were around me during those particularly early years. I was also fortunate to have a number of key mentors, both men and women, who saw the potential in me and just helped me navigate through really, and particularly in finance, where the thought of wearing pants was like unheard of. So, very formal New York banking kind of environment, attaboys, lots of men and sort of chat behind the scenes. And I just was pretty focused. That is something that I think is a strength of mine. It can be a fault, but I'm singularly focused on what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to get done, and be damned for the noise around me. So I think that focus helped me navigate that. I think as I grew my career and had the ability to have more influence, I was able to pick my head up and start to offer opportunities for women and how they could be successful in the workplace. And the hardest thing for me as a woman was the hardest and the greatest thing for me as a woman was having children. And how do you navigate children in your work life? How do you help others do the same? So I forged the way, I guess it was in 1993 or so. I don't want to date myself, but I just did. And I introduced a job share at a very traditional investment management company, where we had two women, 3 days a week each. They overlapped and they shared one role because they had very heavy agendas at home, and it was terribly successful. So I'd like to be a very practical advocate for women and how to help them be successful, particularly during those moments in time where they had children and needed a level of flexibility.
No, that's interesting. One of the first things you mentioned there is interesting. It's something I've heard quite often. It's that you've got to kind of have a suit of armor to come in at a disadvantage and be really successful in these industries. And let's hope that that's not the case. I've got a 6, almost 7-year-old daughter, and we try to build up that suit of armor. But I hope there's a day where that's not the case. So there's just kind of touching on something you just talked about, which is kind of raising a family. You've got, I believe, 3 girls.
Yes.
Wow, I've got 1. that's enough.
I'm still on the way. Don't worry, Paul. You'll survive.
And this is something I actually struggle with, and I see what my wife does as a mother. But where do you and this isn't a question we talked about, but it just kind of came to mind, which is, people talk about work-life balance. Another idea is work-life integration, and running a global team with offices all over the world. How do you manage? How do you manage your career and your family with them, and basically devoted and committed to both?
Yep. No, it's a great question. I can talk about what my life looks like today, but I think more interesting are the challenges that I experienced growing my career with 3 little children. So yes, I have 3 amazing rock star daughters, but the youngest is now 17 and the others are older, so they're highly independent. I would say during that time period when they were, first born and kind of going through those, first decade plus with them, I made some strategic choices, both to lean in and to lean back. And how I navigated my time and my career growth was quite deliberate. And I heard I heard a little bit of that on the call earlier. I think being intentional, whether that's strategically intentional around, I want to go work here, there, otherwise, but also recognizing, it's okay to be ambitious and want more, but also figure out a way to balance that with your career growth and trajectory. So specifically, after I had my 3rd child, we left New York City. I live in New York, for those of you who are interested, and just north of the city right now in the suburbs. And we moved into the suburbs. I was commuting into the city. I had 3 children. It was just, let's just say, not a pretty sight. As I was running out the door, hopping on a train, my hair wet, the whole thing, with anxiety at the same time. And I made a decision to find a role closer to home. And I negotiated a 4-day work week. And I was working for Citibank, running brand strategy and communications. I was not willing to sacrifice my career in terms of the type of contribution I was going to give, but I did say I can do that role and I'm just going to do it on my terms. And it worked really well. And, I was lucky enough to find someone who understood the value I could bring and the willingness to give some level of flexibility. I think it's important for women to be clear around, make it work for them, and ask for that. And if there's one, I know there'll be others, but if there's one silver lining, and I've been saying this, one silver lining to COVID, I'm not sure that many people have caught on to it, but for me, this is a big one. I think the aha moment of the ability to have flexibility in the workspace and have it be across every industry. Now, that doesn't mean people are going to work from home all the time. I certainly wouldn't. I miss my office terribly. But the fact that there's a level of flexibility that is doable and you can still be quite productive if you're home 1 day a week or half a day you need to be somewhere else in a remote environment, that is now universally understood, I think is a huge win for women who are trying to build their career and also grow a family. So,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I completely agree that the genie is out of the bottle on the work from home thing. So I think we'll all be better for it in time. One of the things that's come about as of the last few months is just the lack of role models. I think for people of color, for people with diverse backgrounds, for women in the professional milieu, and you talked a little bit about mentorship, and I wanted to get your thoughts. I'm sure we've got a lot of people who are listening intently. Your thoughts about mentorship and its place and how you approach it. Number one, how you approach it as a mentor and what you think someone who's in a position like yours, needs to do to give back. And number two, I'd just love to hear some of the best advice you ever had from your mentors as you came up.
Yeah, that's a great question. I may answer the question in reverse a bit, if that's okay.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Great. So I thought a lot. I've been very fortunate again to have a number of key, whether they were mentors formally or not, I wouldn't say, but senior individuals who really embraced me and saw my potential and made it clear to me that they saw that potential and were able to kind of elevate and give me opportunity and runway to do great things. In some of those dialogues, one of the things that struck me the most, and it just sticks in my mind, is, we all have a fear of failure, right? I mean, most people do, at least. We all want to do great things. And women, I would tell you, and you guys can disagree with me, women are tough on themselves. They are perfectionists for the most part. The ability to fail and pick yourself up and keep moving on is probably one of the best, most lasting positive impacts one can have on their career, because it takes away the fear factor, and you start to be able to maybe approach some of the projects, be a little bit bolder in your recommendation, trust your instincts a bit more, because you survived maybe a failure. And I'll never forget, it was a woman who was running a part of what was then Paine Webber, which is now UBS Investment Management. She was a senior, she was a president, I think, of the division. And she's like, I did such and such, and it failed. And I'm still here, standing here in front of all of you. And that really did resonate a lot with me. In terms of mentorship and what I try and contribute and give to people, I think it's important to be specific. If you are a mentee, what you are seeking to gain from someone, right? And what are the things that I can help you with, and be prepared for honest feedback at the same time. So I try and be very direct and honest with people. I know I don't like my time wasted. So as a mentee, you should be very clear about what you're trying to get out of that relationship. But if I know someone's serious, I will open doors, give guidance, make connections for people. And then it's really their responsibility as a mentee to make use of those recommendations and those connection points.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the fear of failure is real. And I mean, in my own career, I think it's something that I've come to terms with, and it's made me better, which is just understanding that, failing at something doesn't mean it's the end. And I think having someone in a position of seniority or power kind of own failure is really important, specifically for a woman to do so. Men, I think, this is about marketing for women, but, men can be a little bit tough on themselves too, that's for sure.
Yes.
But I think it's important for us all to destigmatize failure. And then people have to understand it's not typically the end for failure. It's just kind of a new beginning and a new way to look at things. So moving on. So, would love to hear, just from you as, a very successful woman in the field of brand marketing. We hit an inflection point this year. Like there's only before and after, basically March 12th, I guess. The world stopped spinning, and, it can be debated if it started spinning again. And, I just love to understand, I think you're pretty new to the role as CMO at CB Richard Ellis. I could be wrong on that. But, how did you adapt? How did you deal with a company that's, like you said, right in the crosshairs? Like, we're not talking about it like the way we're talking about retail and restaurants, but, commercial real estate might be the most affected vertical in their category in the world right now. So we'd just love to hear how you pivoted and changed, or every day, how you're approaching what you're focused on.
Yep. It's a great question. It has been a fascinating time for me. So when COVID first hit, frankly, we all did, but felt like a punch in my gut, selfishly just saying, oh my God, I just moved into like the industry that's going to be in some ways most heavily or greatly impacted by this. And on the other hand, I said, my God, I can take all of my knowledge that I have from financial services and the crises that I lived through with markets, the great financial crisis, and many times before that. What are the tools and strategies that we deployed successfully in those instances? And, can we kind of translate them into this industry as well? And where we leaned in is we created a very clear framework. We talk about today, tomorrow, the future. And so I would say it is not about before and after. We're in kind of this, I think it was Ross Duteau wrote something about this in the Times. We're in a little bit of no man's land right now, right? Mm-hmm. There was before the crisis, then there's this weird phase we're in now, which has people in a bit of paralysis, but there is a future, right? And that future is going to be great, and we're going to get through it and be on the other side, where hopefully the conditions change. Our strategy from a marketing standpoint has been to lean in and be as engaged with our clients as possible. Now, traditionally at CBRE in the real estate industry, that is a face-to-face engagement. That is a very physical experience, whether that is walking through a new, office building or showing a space of a new Amazon headquarters. It's a many things, but it is very physical because it is about space. It is not the transacting of stocks and bonds on the internet or through the stock exchange. So we really had to change the mindset pretty quickly. And I think our ability to demonstrate the value of advice, guidance, and holding our clients' hands without physically holding them was tremendous. And I think recognized by our clients more than anything, and hopefully recognized, I think, by our internal constituents, who we armed with the kind of information real time that they needed. If I get down to the tactics, in about 3 weeks, we stood up a weekly podcast series. Never had done that before at CBRE. We established a weekly, report that we sent out on the markets, and we've continued to build virtual events and everything that one could imagine to stay in front of our clients, including virtual property tours. So it's been amazing, and that's from a marketing standpoint. From a sort of product offering, again, I feel terribly fortunate to be at the largest, and I would tell you, real estate services firm in the world. I couldn't be prouder to be here. And I see the best minds, and I'm part of the SteerCo around this, coming together, putting our thinking together in a very multidisciplinary way around how do we solve this? How are we going to help people reopen their office way? And then what are the products need for the future? And what is, I would call it, the lasting impact, particularly on the office.
Great. So there's a saying, just a kind of a follow-up question, which is, things that you thought were going to take 5 years took 5 months, and actually they probably took 5 weeks. I was just wondering, either from the marketing discipline or the commercial real estate world, what was the thing that surprised, or even just dealing with your teams and your culture at the office? What was the thing that happened, like overnight, that you guys were kind of planning was going to happen in the future?
So yeah, it's sort of funny, again, is we were literally about to launch 10 large predictions for 2030 the week before COVID hit. And I have the beautiful report on hand. It was a digital experience, the whole thing. Well, all of those have accelerated. So each one of them have accelerated. And there are 2 or 3 that I think are particularly interesting. One is around the fluid workspace, this idea that the office will continue and will continue to be an important part of our sort of work ecosystem. But the makeup and the composition of that will vary. That was something it did 10 years to get to. It's probably going to happen. It's happening now, right? The pendulum's going to swing back a little bit, but that's changed considerably. I think the other trend, and again, this isn't a marketing trend, but I think it's an interesting one related to real estate, is the decision-making and the way that companies think about space and part of their overall sort of employee experience is continuing to elevate. And the CEOs and the CFOs are starting to pay a lot more attention for obvious reasons around that. And their employees' well-being, their safety, and their happiness and their ability to engage is front and center of the dialogue. So that has equally accelerated because of need, right? Office spaces aren't safe. Race for talent continues, et cetera.
Interesting. So there's, another trend that I've been watching is kind of this rapid shift to the people first economy, whether it's customer centricity or just thinking of your employees as people and not products. One of the big trends in that world is just like, I guess, a rush to equality, which is a very, very good thing. And I was just wanted to kind of understand what you guys are doing as a company around diversity in the workplace, equality in the workplace. What steps have you taken since the events of this summer?
Yep. So, since I've joined the firm and spent time with our leadership, equality and inclusion and diversity have been important pillars in a lot of the dialogue. We have very active affinity groups across the organization. So that's a really good thing. Since the the George Floyd event, and obviously all of the uprising post that, it has only accelerated and amplified our focus. I'm very proud to say that we've recently appointed a new head of a chief diversity officer, reporting directly to our CEO, Bob Selenick, who's a tremendous person from within our organization. And he's already, I think, having a really positive influence on the company. I think of it as consciousness raising right now. I think we're having tough conversations, but everyone is having them. And everyone, I think I know I've done this numerous times with my marketing team, which is about 400 or 500 people from across the world. People are really engaged. They want to have the conversation. They want to be inclusive of other people, and it can be race, gender, ethnicity. I think all aspects. I think the spirit of the company, while it's a large institutional Fortune 125, the thing that's great to see is people's openness to perspective. And I think at the end of the day, we think we're going to do better by our clients as well, by having the right type of environment and including diverse perspectives. So with a commitment by our CEO and how that has trickled down is pretty significant.
That's interesting. That's great to hear. I think one thing we're tracking on the street is just this focus on ESG, diversity, inclusion, and the fact that things that were once considered kind of fringe, companies who had strong environmental standards and strong, diversity, inclusion, have actually outperformed. Right, are companies that are very strong. They've got much closer relationships to their communities, to their supply chain, to they're much more resilient for the kind of shutdowns that we saw. So it's great to hear that CBRE is leading in that field right now.
And even on the topic of sustainability, just to riff off what you were saying, I mean, ESG is a core, it's table stakes from the investment business for sure. And in the end, I think people thought it was an option of doing good. I think if you analyze companies, to your point, who are ESG sensitive, they end up doing better because it's the right thing to do long term.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah.
Coming back to your career a little bit, what's one of the toughest career choices you've ever made?
That's a good one. Sometimes those choices are what do you do, and sometimes those career choices are what you don't do. And I think in my case, I was going through an M&A where I was at a company that was going through a merger. And, in those cases, many times you never know where you're going to land. And so I had some question marks, and there was some recruiting going on, and I spoke with Goldman Sachs. Who wouldn't want to work in financial services at kind of the gold standard at that point? And I had to make a tough decision, and I really put my family and my own, I think, sort of sanity in front of me, and made that the priority, and chose not to go to Goldman Sachs, simply because I didn't think I had the sort of energy, capacity, and focus that one would need to work in that investment bank at that point in my career. So that's a little bit of that lean in, lean out. And there have been days when I said, geez, was that a mistake? Should I have done that? And, I tend not to look back and have regrets. I always look forward, and I don't think it was a mistake, but it was one of those tough decisions.
Mm-hmm. Totally understand. So one more question I've got. So I'm sure you've got a pretty big team. I'm sure it's not just you and 3 other people. But just, as someone who manages people, is managing them remotely right now, I think we're all looking for kind of, what is that balance? What is the way to motivate your people, keep your morale high, not burn them out? Just curious if you've got any advice for, all the people on the line here.
Geez, if my team is listening, I'm not sure how they're going to feel about my answer. I think first and foremost is being very communicative and available and accessible to your team. I think the second point around being very clear around the objectives and what you're trying to achieve and getting everyone on the same page. So there is some extra, I call it front loading of strategy and discussion and clarity, I think helps everyone, because you don't have that kind of passing through the hallway, quick catch up. I will tell you this, one of the biggest changes that I had in moving to CBRE is it is a very distributed workforce already. So we as a company, we're pretty accustomed to kind of the Zoom environment.
Mhm.
So I'm like, there's been a little bit of an easier transition, I would say, for a lot of us. We're used to working in that kind of distributed remote way. But how do we do it? And I think having a level of empathy of, everyone's unique situation. I heard the woman who was on before, I think her name was Andrea, talked about her work life with the dog and her two kids. I mean, everyone has a story, right? Life
Mhm.
goes on. People's health is an issue, schooling, and just having empathy to help and be flexible so that people feel that they are supported by their leader has been really important. But the more personal and more available I've been to people, I think has been particularly helpful.
Okay, great. I said that question was for the people listening in, but it was mostly for me.
Doing all
Being a little selfish right now.
Oh, I'm happy to help you.
Um, I think we're coming to the end. I think we're going to open it up for Q&A here in a second.
Great.
But anything else?
No, I mean, this has just been fun, first of all, Paul. So thank you for your time. I didn't talk a lot about marketing strategy. I think the focus more on what is it like to be a woman in a B2B large financial institution or real estate company and the challenges. Hopefully that gives people a good insight and a way forward and hope and working through COVID. I think flexibility probably and adaptability are two traits that if you can bring to bear will only help you, as you think about your future. And that's something that I think I've gotten better at over time.
That's great. Thank you very much. So the hotline just lit up. We've got a lot of
Yep.
questions coming in.
Great.
First of all, what brands do you look up to? What leaders in marketing do you admire?
Okay, great. Right now there are a few brands, particularly at CBRE, that we look toward. We think about McKinsey very much. We look at Accenture. We look at the work that JP Morgan Chase does across the full spectrum as brands that are iconic in many respects. And I would say IBM as well from a marketing standpoint, where I envy a lot of their work in the Smart Planet platform. Those are probably 3 or 4 that I envy. And again, I'm in the B2B space right now, and of my career, we always think about the end user, but we are focused on key business decision makers. So those are kind of that's the right company that we want to keep.
Exactly. So a very tactical question.
Sure.
Where are you learning best practices for developing better customer relationships through digital touchpoints? Email, social media, apps?
Yep. Great question. I've re-engineered our team pretty significantly, and I've brought on board lots of people from the B2C space to teach us. So it's talent that I'm bringing to the table that are teaching me, frankly, and then agency partners who are leading us as well. And so that's been a big strategy. We have a great marketing team at CBRE, and I was lucky enough to join that team. And I think what I quickly did is I saw where there were gaps and where we needed to elevate our capabilities. And so we've brought a lot of people on from the content side, video, creative, digital strategies, just to help fill in some of those gaps.
Okay, interesting. You brought up something that I'm curious about, which is kind of this 5 years, 5 months thing. And prior to COVID, there was a lot of talk about agencies and how agencies were becoming obsolete. I've kind of seen in the last 3 or 4 months that that may not be the case. And I'm just curious, like, what your perception is of the agency and its role in your business. And is it more important than it was, less important, always going to be a part of what you do? Just curious there.
Yeah, I mean, I am, and I see someone wrote a note about what's your favorite leadership quote, my mantra. I want greatness. I want the greatest talent. And if that talent comes in the form of people around my leadership table, if that talent is a partner next to me, I want the best of the best. And sometimes that will be an agency partner. Right now, we're very fortunate to have some of the best by our side leading us. Look, they have an accelerated knowledge base of doing X, Y, and Z with 20 or 30 other companies. I'm never going to be able to replicate that. So I do see the value in that kind of creative energy, but you're only as good as how you manage and direct those teams. So, one thing I've learned, you can't just bolt on an agency and expect it to be perfect. You have to manage it thoughtfully and integrate And that's when magic does happen.
That's great. For me, this is like a one-on-one masterclass, so I'm happy not to pay the monthly subscription.
You have to know later, Paul.
What B2B marketing strategies are you prioritizing right now?
Content. I think content is king for us. We have a wealth. I call it an embarrassment of riches in terms of content and thought leadership and research. We churn it out constantly. Our ability to better understand the customer and the audience segment, be able to tailor that content to what they want when they want it, is again going to be our magic formula, we believe, that will make us stand out and drive greater awareness and consideration around all the different prospects and partners that we do business with. So it is really that advice and guidance that we're seeking to differentiate around.
Interesting. So in the world of content, you've got best-in-class editorial content you can align with. You've got custom content typically built by those companies, like let's plug Bloomberg. And then you've got supplied content, which is something we've seen really come, like companies like Goldman and Bank of America. Where do you see that mix evolving over the coming years to a place where you are a content creator, a place where you partner with brands with credibility and the capacity to build, or just want to understand what you think where that's going?
Yeah, I mean, I think as leaders in the real estate ecosystem and having real perspective from the angle of investors in real estate, tenants in real estate, and then you and I who are experiencing the workplace, we have unique proprietary insights that we're trying to bring to bear. So I would say the content that I'm referring to is CBRE generated. Now, sometimes there's a partnership. We're seeking to bring other advisors and experts to the table. For example, just quickly with COVID, we're partnering with Johns Hopkins. So we have someone from Hopkins who's partnering with us as we think about solutions and how to provide advice and guidance. But it is all really funneling through our voice. And we see that as a really important differentiator.
That's great. A couple more here from the field. How has your leadership style changed over the past few months? And you touched on some of those themes. Actually, let me make it a bigger question. How has it changed over the past few years?
Okay, I think that's probably a good one. This is a term many of you have probably heard, servant leadership. I think that's something I'm more attuned to now and I'm able to do now, where I'm really here to be a facilitator to my team more than anything. I mean, there are certain projects which I'm clearly driving, but I want to help my team thrive and do great work and grow their careers, and I'm there in service of them in many respects. So I think that is a transition. I don't think I would have said that to you maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I was clawing my way to figure out how to do what I was doing.
I totally understand. I was trying to see if there's any more. Here's another one just kind of came in. When you're starting a new position, what's advice on getting started with somewhat unfamiliar territory?
That's a great question. I love that. Because while I would say real estate business and CBRE in particular somewhat was adjacent to what I've done before, it is a new industry with a new actors playing and a new business model. I went deep. I like to go very deep and really understand, what do the clients think? How do our salespeople interact? How are sit in client meetings? What I did is before I even joined, I built the 90-day plan and mapped it out, because I think it just helps as much clarity and a framework that you can have. It gives you that strength as things start coming. Probably 4 weeks, understanding the different markets, the different challenges people are having, and trying to understand the business. And I was fortunate to have someone, I called her my Sherpa, a very senior individual at the firm who had been a broker for many years, very successful. And I'd call her, I'm like, what is it, call a friend? Dial a friend,
Yep. Yeah, Lifeline from Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
She was my lifeline. I'd get off the call. I'm like, Laura, I didn't understand what they just said. Explain this. questions, you have to listen, and I think you have to immerse yourself. And, you know, I'll pat myself on the back for a minute. I think because I did that sort of, you know, without pause, I was able to pick my head up 6 months post joining or 3 months post joining and could have the much more meaningful conversations with my business partners. I'm a counselor to help them build their business. As a marketer, I sit alongside, we have 3 business segments. I sit alongside each of those business leaders. We have 50,000 people, and I want to understand what are they trying to do, and my goal is to help them do it better. Without understanding the business, you don't have the credibility. So really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think about some of the most, you know, inspiring and transformational leaders that I've ever worked for, like Vivek Shah at J2 Global. They knew enough to do pretty much every job in the company if they had to, and they were willing to do it as well if need be.
It's good to hear that, Paul. You're absolutely right. I think that you're just better at your job. I mean, and marketing is the business. All of you on this call are marketers. We all know it. We see everything. We're in a very special and unique position as marketers, I believe, that we understand the business and the inner workings sometimes better than others in the company sitting in different roles. So it's a special place.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know if Lauren's out there, but Lauren, do we have time for one more, or is it we're getting close? I think that means we've got time for one
Hey,
more.
Paul, yeah, we've got time. Go for it.
Thank you.
Well, now I've lost my train of thought. It happens.
That's
You know,
okay. Well, wait, I'm going to ask you a question, Paul. All right. So secret for the group. So Paul and I did a little bit of a prep discussion, and he was so happy to be on this women's panel or women's fireside chat. He shared with me that he considers himself a feminist. And I said, please share more. Like, tell us, what do you mean by that, and how did that happen? So I'm going to flip the tables and turn it to you.
Yeah. It's like I'm like happy I brought that up now. Yeah, you know, I come from kind of a long line of, I'd say, powerful women. You know, I've got 2 older sisters who are brilliant. You know, my mother was the head of the union for the Teachers Association. And I just grew up living in a world where there was like nothing they couldn't do. And when I started understanding that, you know, the world wasn't necessarily fair and it wasn't necessarily equal, it was just a foreign concept to me. It was just like this foundational belief I had that there was no job a man could do that a woman couldn't do, you know, as well or better. You know, outside of, like I said, like maybe physical strength stuff, a little bit different. But and I think each gender brings a unique perspective and a unique, you know, like something special to the jobs they do. But it was just foreign to me. And then I've always been fortunate to have, you know, lead teams that are, you know, predominantly made up of women, or be on teams with a lot of women, or work for really powerful and strong women leaders. And I was explaining my beliefs around equality and around, you know, this untapped potential we have as a people, as a country, as a planet, right? That's just like trapped in our people, which is the women who could be doing so much more if only they had the chance. And someone just said, "Oh, you're a feminist," and I was just like, "What?" I'm not a feminist. I just believe, you know, in equality for both genders. And then I realized over time that yes, I am a feminist. So yeah, you know, I think it's like I say, we talked a little about it, but you know, we think about how do we get more out of our planet, right? And so much of that potential is just trapped in the people, and it's just waiting to come out. And I believe it's women, but it's also, you know, people of color, you know, communities that have traditionally been under disadvantaged. I think if we can get everybody to a level playing field, as we discussed, you know, we're just going to move fast. We're just going to move forward so much faster. We'll live in a better world. So, you know, yes, I'm a feminist. Wear it proudly.
You're a tremendous optimist, which I love too.
Yeah,
and it is simple. It's conceptually very simple. How can you argue with what you just said?
Mm-hmm.
I think that getting there is the hard part.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of hard work to be done, a lot of minds and hearts to change. But you know, it's I think you said it earlier, but it's like a show, don't tell. When you see people like yourself leading 100,000 person companies into a bold new future, it gives a lot of people around you and a lot of people that look up to you a lot of hope for themselves and for the future of our country.
It's a beautiful note.
Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this. I hope we stay in touch. I
I
think
would
there's
love
65 people listening in, but
And we love Bloomberg. Good stuff. You guys do great work. I listen all the time. So a little shout out to the Bloomberg platform, offering an awful lot to everyone.
yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. I'll tell
Yeah.
everyone that you feel that way because it is a special company as well.
Thank you guys so much for
your
coming
office.
today.
Sorry, Lauren.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. I was just saying thank you for taking the time to join us today. I hope you'll both consider coming back again. So we're doing this every day. So
Every day. Paul and I,
every day.
we're going to do it for the Bloomberg studio next time.
Yeah.
Okay?
that work. I've never been there.
Sorry, Paul. I have.
Yeah, I know. It's everyone's like, your office is so beautiful. I'm like, I started in March.
We love beautiful office spaces, so
I'm looking forward to getting back there. Looking forward to bringing the energy back to New York City.
we all are. All in.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you very much, Benji, and for everyone listening in today.
Have a great day, everyone. Be safe.
You too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I can't believe it, but we're transitioning to our last session of the day. So I'd like you guys to give a nice warm welcome to Kanan Banahi, the head of global marketing for Nutrilite. Her successful career has spanned 3 continents, working across 7 different industries and 60 plus countries, including iconic companies like PepsiCo, Frito-Lay, Kimberly-Clark, IBM, LG, Merck, and Newell Rubbermaid. Passion for guiding other women who have similar goals so that they can successfully navigate their careers to rise to their full potential. And moderating this session is our good friend Lauren Cook. Lauren is an accomplished sales leader based in California with 15 years of experience under her belt. Currently, she's doing her part to make the internet a safer place as the Director of Business Development at White Ops. Welcome.
Thank you. Apologies for any background noise. I have a 2-year-old that is going down for a nap right now, and she's not always thrilled about it. So, just a little bit of background noise. So, but thanks, Lauren, for the introduction. Kanan, great to talk with you again. Excited about today. Quick intro on my side. As far as is doing our part to make the internet a better space. I work on the partnership side of the White Ops business. We help educate brands on marketer fraud. White Ops is in cybersecurity. We're the global leaders of bot mitigation. We work with over 200 of today's leading enterprises, helping secure their inventory, their sites, marketing efforts, and data from being impacted by fraud, especially by sophisticated bots. So for brands, the first point of attack that we help protect against is when bots try to disguise themselves as humans entering brand sites, primarily through paid media tactics such as search and social, land on sites, fill out forms, skew metrics. Our mission is to disrupt the economics of cybercrime, but our motto is to keep it human. So keep the internet human, but also keep our culture human. We're constantly striving to be a more diverse and inclusive culture, more human. So I'm always interested to find inspiring ways in other women's stories in particular. Thus, super excited to talk to Kanan. You have that incredible background that Lauren ran us through. I'd love to hear your own introduction and tell us a little about what your professional journey has looked like so far.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you fine. I was told to put it on grid view. I'm not sure if I put it on grid view correctly. I don't know if Lauren, if you're still around, you can give me a thumbs up but I think we're okay.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Super excited to be here, and what a pleasure meeting you, Lauren. So I guess the best way to describe me is I'm kind of like a citizen of the world. I grew up in a very small country called Zambia in Africa, and I've lived pretty much all over the world. I've lived in India, I've lived in Korea, I've lived in Mexico, I've lived in Paris, and I live now in the US. I've worked across 7 different industries, I think even more than that. My background was in pre-med, so somewhere along the way I lost my way and didn't become a doctor. But I did work in the pharmaceutical industry, and then I decided, no, I need to go market toilet paper. So I joined Kimberly-Clark, Don't make fun of toilet paper right now. Very important.
Essential.
Essential, absolutely. And then worked with Pepsi and Frito-Lay, and then with Noah Rubbermaid, and now most recently working with Nutrilite, which is actually the #1 global vitamin and supplement brand. And we can't keep enough in stock because everybody's taking supplements. So that's me in a nutshell. But my greatest pride and joy and achievement is being chief mom officer. I have a 5-year-old little boy who is my boss, and he's the cutest boss I've ever seen. So I totally identify with you, Lauren, about having a 2-year-old and nap time, things like that.
You just got to roll with it, especially
Exactly.
right now. I think the now famous Sheryl Sandberg quote: "COVID's creating this double shift for working moms." And then actually, I just read this great article on Fortune, I think from maybe Tuesday, about the backslide of workplace gender equality being driven by COVID, kind of at all levels of of career paths. And then I research across the board from Lean In and SurveyMonkey saying that 1 in 4 women are currently experiencing severe anxiety, physical symptoms like racing heart, compared to only 1 in 4 men. Of course, they get off easy. And then, so many women like struggling with sleep issues. What guidance do you have for all of us for balancing gender roles in your household today, and then simultaneously kind of holding ground where it comes to the strides in workplace gender equality that we've made?
It's a very loaded and important question.
I know. It's a big question.
Today's day and age, and I'll do my best to try to answer this. In fact, I was just reading the USA Today article. I think it came out yesterday or day before, that said the US is entering its first female recession. And yes, as if we needed more bad news in this whole thing, and that unemployment actually has reached double digit for the first time since 1948. So not a lot of good news out there as a woman, but I've been very, very fortunate that even during this crisis, a lot of women have reached out to me, and I've been coaching them and walking them through this to the best of my ability. Honestly, I don't have all the answers, but I've given them some tips, which seem to have helped. Tip #1 that I always say is put on your own oxygen mask first, because as women, we seem to be martyrs, and especially when you're like confined in a lockdown and you're trying to figure out elderly parents and young kids and a family, you always put yourself last. And being in health and wellness, I often don't practice what I'm preaching, which is, but you can't, unless you're healthy, you can't take care of anybody else. So I know working in supplements that are sleep supplements and our immunity supplements, all of these are going selling through the roof, but take care of yourself. #2 that we've implemented in our very, very tiny household, it's just my husband and my 5-year-old son, is everybody has responsibilities. We're all into this together. Even my 5-year-old, he has to come home, and when he's out playing, he has to take his socks, put it in the laundry. He has to clean up his toys. Not always easy to negotiate with a 5-year-old, but it's 2 less things for me to do. And same, I'm blessed with a partner, a husband who tries his best to step in and help out. So that's my #2, is making sure you're not trying to be superwoman. Don't try to be perfect. Delegate. And tip #3 brings in your external surroundings, your workforce, which is managing expectations, being transparent and managing expectations. And often women struggle with this more than men, from what I'm hearing, talking to folks, is they don't want to tell their boss if they're on a call, like, I can't do this, I've got a kid to take care of, things like that. But honestly, being a boss on the other side, tell them what's going on in your household. In fact, right now, I don't think there's been a time in history where so many managers are getting a view into your living rooms, your dining rooms, etc., and seeing the puppies and the kids, etc. And the way even I have to do that with a 5-year-old. So before every important meeting, what I basically say to him is, this is really important. Unless it's an emergency, please don't trouble me. And I also manage expectations with my coworkers, my boss, or whoever I'm talking to, and say, okay, I've negotiated with the 5-year-old and said, don't trouble me unless it's an emergency, but let's see how it goes. And I can tell you, 80% of the time, he'll come to me, it's an emergency. Spider-Man can't find his web, or Thor can't find his hammer. And I can tell you 100% of the time, anyone I've been on the call with has been so empathetic, so understanding. And honestly, there's a plus side to this. And when you talk about circumstances like this causing gender equality and things, I have noticed, and I've talked to other even men managers, they've noticed how women have been able to balance in these environments. They're like, oh my God, that person is so resilient. Like she had a toddler hanging off her, but she kept going and she kept presenting, or this person has done such amazing time management. So you have this ability, if you want to be a glass half full kind of a person, which I am, this is an opportunity to showcase how resilient you are, how you prioritize, and people see you in your day-to-day life. And this could give you an edge amongst your peer set as you're going forward. So don't think of it all in the negative sense if you have the capacity. So again, put on your own oxygen mask first, but if you have that capacity, this can give you an edge.
I love the, oh, sorry, I'm not sure where there's an echo. I love the analogy of put on your own oxygen mask first. That's so, it's not intuitive to women to help yourself first, right? You want to handle everything else. And as you were talking, I was thinking about the, I think it was either BBC or CNN, the reporter that had, the toddler coming in the back. And then at the beginning of COVID, there was, a satire version of the female doing it, of the mom doing it. And she's like, feeding a bottle to the baby, and the other kid comes in, and it's this whole, like, she's just doing it all while manning the meeting like a pro. So
I love that.
yeah. Women are excellent multitaskers.
Yeah.
And thus we end up having so many jobs, right? Like 2 to 3 jobs, including like your home life, those jobs, as well as your professional life. Does your household adhere to traditional gender roles, or is it sort of like you have your own defined roles and responsibilities and they kind of blend together?
As I said, I'm very lucky that I have a fantastic husband. We're both not originally from the US. So when we had our son about 5 years ago, we realized, like, we're in this together. So thankfully, we've never had the traditional gender roles because we both have like highly demanding careers. And thankfully, most of the time he can fend for himself. So that's awesome. But when you have a baby, it changes everything. And we said, okay, how do we cope with this? So what we did, because we didn't have family around to take care, and it does take a village to raise a child, 2 things. First of all, huge calendar synchronization. We both travel a lot. Thankfully, my job,
or you did.
Yeah, I did. That's a better way to say it. And my husband has to deal with clients, so he has much more last minute. So we would always text and coordinate our calendars. But we were also very agile. Life happens. Of course, we didn't anticipate life happening at the rate that COVID has disrupted things. But if we did have roles, like, okay, you pick up, I do drop off and things, but sometimes I'd be stuck in a meeting or he'd have to catch a flight and things. We just flex. And we adopted a village. When we didn't have anyone, we were like, okay, this person's going to be helping us with this. This person's going to help us with this. And we've been very fortunate that without that adopted village, I don't know what we would have done. So I'd guide other women, like, don't fall into this gender trap. This is a modern world, and you do need, if you have a partner, I feel a lot of empathy for single mothers and all, but everybody can adopt a village. So try adopting a village.
I like the adaptability, especially in our industry that is so sort of like certainly hot spots in the East Coast and the West Coast where people didn't necessarily grow up, so they may not have family backing them up in those spaces. So looking at non-traditional areas to try to help build some better support. That's terrific advice. So we're seeing this. We're in this rapid evolution of the employment landscape right now. How do you see all these changes impacting women in leadership?
I think it's a great question, and I can't give you a great answer because I think we're like on shifting sands right now as we go through it. Having said that, I will not pick women from the business world. I'll pick for who have been on the landscape, women that are leading countries. And what has really impressed me, and I think Forbes has done an article on this, is the women that, or the countries that handled COVID very well and all happen to, or majority happen to be women leaders. And I'm totally like stealing from them, but I noticed the trends that these women had. One, I think women leaders a little more so than a lot of male leaders, and I don't want to stereotype because there's a lot of empathetic male leaders, but women leaders by genetically are engineered to have a greater level of EQ, and all these ladies, whether it's Germany or New Zealand or Taiwan, I think, really handled it with EQ, but also brought in that sense of urgency and empathy. And if you see that, translate that into the business world or the marketing world, these are all success factors. It doesn't matter which, if you're running a country or running a business or running a household, you have to have these things. There's things that will happen, how you quickly deal with it, how you, not just with a smart way, but with an emotional and empathetic way, will set you apart.
Yeah, the New Zealand Prime Minister.
I'm a fangirl.
Me too. Yeah. So as a rising female leader, well, as a you've carved your place in leadership as a female in business. But as you were rising, did you have a professional mentor that you leaned on, and how did that experience impact your journey?
That's a great question. So, of course, mentorship gets talked about a lot. I'll tell you my journey. So when I started with a great company. It was a Fortune 500 company, but it was in the Midwest in a very small place. So if I was looking for a role model, like there wasn't somebody there. So what I decided was I will tap into mentors myself. So a lot of you listening might be working for companies where you may or may not have a formal mentorship program. And I have personally found that it doesn't matter if there's a formal mentorship program. For me, if I couldn't find one person who was the package deal of everything that I wanted to emulate, I would go find my mentorship board. They were like the little mini UN for me. I liked one person because of the way they could navigate through politics. I liked another person for the way they were a fantastic leader with empathy and things. So I would just reach out to these people very informally. And for me, the informal mentorships were amazing because I had a personal connection with that person. I would, even if I didn't know them, I would say, hey, I saw you speaking here. In case you have time, could we just grab coffee for 30 minutes? And then I'd kind of feel them out if they're even interested in being a mentor. And of course, years later, I became mentors for the last decade or so to multiple people. And I realized that more informal mentorships are the best win-win situation because nobody put you together. You found a common thread and it helps you navigate. So you don't have to find one person particularly. I literally, my career is thanks to riding on the shoulder of giants who have been mentors in various aspects for me.
That's so interesting that that's your sort of being sort of a networking maven, if you will. I did a couple of women in marketing panels, or I did one in June with Lindsay Sutton, the SVP of marketing for John Hancock, and she said the exact same thing. Like don't pigeonhole yourself to just one mentor. I think she referred to herself as a networking maven.
I like
exactly
that.
How, yeah,
I might borrow that.
Clearly, this is a theme for successful women in leadership that you build your network everywhere.
Exactly.
So what advice do you have? I mean, sounds like kind of mentors agnostic of gender. What advice do you have for young women getting their start who, like yourself, find themselves employed somewhere that there are no women in leadership in this era?
So I will say for myself, this is what worked because, as I said, I was in a Midwest town where there was one leader who was a woman, but I couldn't find somebody that was woman, a person of color, international. So I realized, I was like, okay, if I don't have a role model, let me pave the way and maybe someday I'll be a role model. And again, my strategy was, it didn't matter if you're a woman or a man, what gender, ethnicity, if there was a quality that I liked about that leadership, how can I learn that skill? And that's kind of what I would advise to even a woman right now who is starting off. If you don't find it within your current ecosystem, reach out to people that whether it's through LinkedIn or things like that, because people are speaking, especially in COVID, you find so many videos of people speaking.
Like Lauren said, who do this every day.
Exactly. So do that. And also, I've used videos from women speaking engagements where I don't even know these women, but I watch their videos and I learn from them, because in the day of digital, there is so many tips and tricks and things that you can learn online, even if you don't have a personal connect. And if you need help, again, reach out. I'd be happy to help coach anybody who needs any help. So please reach out.
What about a challenge? Like a challenge you faced as a female leader and what you learned from it?
Great question. So I'll kind of twist that question. Instead of saying a challenge that I learned as a female leader, because by the time you become in leadership level, you've kind of figured out how to navigate a little bit. I'll give you a story from very early in my career. So it may not be the world's most politically correct story, so please bear with me. But I started when I was like a 20-something-year-old, and it was my first job. And as I mentioned, it was at this great company in the Midwest, and the HR lead on orientation day sat me down. He was this very kind grandfatherly figure and said, "Hey, have you ever heard of the terminology like 3 strikes and you're out?" And thankfully, I knew a little bit about baseball. So I was like, yeah, I have. And he goes, "Remember, in your career, to be successful, you're already 3 strikes and you're in." And I was like a little confused. I didn't know what he was saying. And he goes, "You're a woman, you're a person of color, and you're international. So don't be fooled. You're not on the same level playing field as your white, Caucasian, or American male counterpart." And I was a little dumbfounded and all that. I didn't know how to react. So I just sat there. But I thought about that later on. And I was like, I can't do anything about these strikes against me, so to speak. I was born this way. I was grown up this way. What I can do is focus on what value I can add. That means making sure I'm adding value from my work standpoint, making sure that I'm working smarter, I'm working harder. That's what I'm going to focus on. And that's kind of what I've guided my entire career on. And people say, "Why do you work this hard?" and things, given that you've reached this stage. And I'm like, I never forgot that I have to do this. And in today's day and age, and this is over 20 years ago, yes, I'm pretty old, but people starting now, I think, thanks to leaders like Cheryl and all who started the Lean In movement, there is far more opportunity for younger women now than there were. And there are still challenges, without a doubt. Still have a long way to go. But there's opportunities to overcome those challenges because the conversations are happening, and that's what's important. And there is more help than those of us who started a couple of decades ago. And those of us who did start a couple of decades ago, we're here to help you. And there's lots of men also that are willing to step up and help. So it's not just a woman's game.
Yeah, I think that's, I shared with you that here recently I read a LinkedIn post by a marketer who had mentioned that she preferred to be called on by women rather than men. Selfishly, as a woman, I thought, oh, that's good for me. but frankly, it had not occurred to me before. Do you feel that people judge women more quickly and differently still in professional settings, even in parts of the business world, that there are more women?
I would say yes. And anytime we go through diversity and inclusion training, this comes up as a topic quite often. I think it's improving, but it's not improving fast enough. I think the Lean In movement started like 2012, 2013. And since then, I still remember, since we're in marketing, you guys might have watched a Pantene ad that was created that were men and women doing the same task and women getting labeled differently. So the man is labeled as, oh, he's so persuasive, and the woman is labeled as, she's so pushy, or the man is like, oh, he's so bold, and the woman is so bossy. So yes, it does still happen. And I think it happens especially if the woman is ambitious and confident, etc., that you get labeled one way. But it also happens at another stage in a woman's life, which you and I will identify with as mothers, is the moment you become a mother or you're pregnant and thing, it happens unconscious bias, I'd call it, even amongst women managers. They're like, oh my God, will that person be able to manage her house and her career? It even happened with me where a boss asked me during maternity leave, like, how are you going to manage this? Who's going to take care of your kid? And I was like a new mom, and I was like, didn't even know which side was up. And I gave her a very honest answer. I said, I don't know, but I'm going to do my best on both fronts and figure it out. If it doesn't work out, I'll be the first one to come and talk to you. And I was very happy that when year-end performance reviews came, she was like, oh, it's amazing. The feedback is amazing how you've managed it. But the feedback that made me feel the best was people saying, oh my gosh, she's an even better leader now because of becoming a mom. And since then, I've seen a lot of research that moms make better leaders. They figure out ruthless prioritization, anyway, there's multitasking, and they lead more with empathy. So I think don't let these labels or being judged stop you. Continue to provide value, and honestly, each stage in your life will make you a better leader.
Nice. I think we're closing in on Q&A, but we have so many great questions for you. I guess from our conversation, maybe one final, or possibly two. How do we help make sure the next generation of young females just starting out in this sort of odd, unsettling time is nurtured in a way that they feel empowered?
So there's, I think, two parts to this question. It's a very important question, especially in this current time. I'll tell you my personal take on it. I think there's an internal part. When you talk about empowerment, personally, I believe empowerment comes from within. I have always personally felt empowered. I don't, like Eleanor Roosevelt said, like nobody else should have the right to dictate how you feel. And I think the external factor is taking the empowerment somebody feels and being that wind beneath their wings. And for this current generation of women, like I said before, reach out. First of all, make sure you know what success looks like for you. Nobody knows your own true worth better than you. So put that guiding post saying, I want to achieve this. Then find people who can help you, champions. They can be from all levels on the organization and ethnicity and your ecosystem. And then kind of have a roadmap. This is like your own GPS to get there. But the first step has to be you finding out what you want to do, setting your goal, and finding your voice. And if you don't have anybody in your ecosystem, like I said before, reach out to other people. As I say, I know we don't have much time, so if anybody finds anything of value from what I just said, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and if I can help you, I'll do so. Or there'll be other women leaders that will be very, very helpful in helping you achieve the goal. But know that you're in a system where you will be nurtured because the right conversations are happening both amongst men and women.
Nice. I think that's literally one of the very first Q&A questions we have is, when you're starting a new position, what's advice on getting started with somewhat unfamiliar territory? It feels like a nice sort of dovetail to that.
Exactly.
And then what advice would you give young women just starting out in her career in brand marketing? So I feel like we have maybe some younger audiences participating today.
Absolutely. I think, again, the number one advice I say is making sure your passion and your goals are not only well defined for you, but the people around you know that. Because if you're not aware of it, and I say this with my own team and thing, like, tell me what you want to be when you grow up. And let me see if I can help you get there, because people are motivated from different aspects. And hopefully most managers sit down for one-on-ones with their teams. And those are great opportunities to say, hey, this is where I am and this is where I want to go. And sometimes I've had team members say, I don't know where I want to go, because they're very young in career. And that's totally fine, because then you try to figure out what they're passionate about and see them on projects, and kind of they can figure out, oh, this one I like and this one I don't. But having an open conversation with people that have the influence on your career is very important.
So how has your leadership style changed over just these past few months? Like, maybe a better question is, like, you know, as you've evolved as a leader, it's changed. Has it accelerated in the past few months? And then have you been able to continue to develop more personal relationships with your colleagues, even in this kind of, new era?
It's a great question. So I'll say there's been, if I had to chalk out the last 10 years, my leadership style has probably changed in two major milestone areas. One was when I became a mom, as I mentioned, because it gave me a whole new perspective that I just didn't have before. And I'm glad to hear that it was in the betterment of things. And the second is during COVID. I think the empathy that I had learned as a mom went into steroid mode during COVID, because all of a sudden you're seeing people for not just the person who comes to work all put together. Here are people like no hair and makeup, trying to juggle things. And the more you listen, the more you ask. I always like carve out some time in the first 5 minutes instead of just jumping into a project to say, hey, how's it going? How are you doing? Anything? And a lot of managers that I've talked to have all had to be like psychologists and therapists through COVID, but it's so important because mental health is suffering during this time. And people want to, even if I don't have the answers, just to be a venting point when you can't interact is super duper important. And as far as relationships, I think the silver lining of COVID personally has been relationships, not just with my coworkers, et cetera, but reconnecting with people that I haven't for decades. I reconnected with my kindergarten friends and my high school friends, and they're all over the world. And we all had one thing to say: why did it take a pandemic for us to reconnect this way? So yes, I've done a gazillion Zoom calls, but there's this personal reconnection that I hope I don't lose, and I hope it makes me a better leader going forward.
My family has had that same conversation multiple times, that, wait, we didn't talk anywhere near this much. Now, every other dinner we're having a Zoom conference with my parents, because my parents live far away. And same thing with my sister and her family. And we did a virtual Easter together, and so
And you realize what matters at the end of the day.
yeah, it's kind of lovely. It's sad to not be in person, but having the more frequent interactions is great. Are there, what particular brands do you look up to? This is actually a really interesting question. Our CEO at CES spoke on sort of a privacy panel about the future of consumers congealing around brands we trust. So I love to see this question. What brands do you look up to? And then are there specific leaders in marketing you admire? So two.
Got it. So as far as brands I look up to, there's quite a few, and it has nothing to do with COVID, but right from disruptive brands like Dove, which started the whole conversation about real beauty. But it wasn't just a conversation. They made very choiceful choices even in their product design and things. So if they were talking about real beauty, you didn't see anti-aging creams and things like that. It wasn't just a revenue thing. So I love brands that are very true to their mission. On the other end of the spectrum, smaller brands like Impossible Foods, I just absolutely love what they're doing, because they could have easily been bought out by multiple big players. But they said, nope, we don't want to do that. We want to stay true to our mission about a healthier planet and a healthier people. So I'm very, very fascinated by their founder and the way they stayed true to their values. And then, of course, in COVID, Lego, being a mother of everything, a brand that...
Play-Doh.
Oh, there you go. But participating in these conversations, I absolutely love them. And as far as leaders in marketing, I don't seek out like woman or man or thing, anybody who's inspirational. Personally, like I've been very, very fortunate to have worked at Pepsi when Indra Nooyi was the CEO, and she's the ex-CEO of PepsiCo. And I've followed her like a fangirl, absolutely love her. During COVID, very much Jacinda, the Prime Minister from New Zealand, who has had to deal with
a baby on her hip.
With a baby on her hip. So I'm like, oh my God, more power to you. And of course, Steve Jobs comes up. Not sure I would like work for him, but he's inspirational. He's like a marketing genius. I feel the same way about Elon Musk. Again, may not be the best leader, but disruptors and people that will have left the planet a better place.
Yeah. Another question from the audience: where are you learning best practices for developing better customer relationships through digital touch points, email, social media, apps? I think this is kind of along the lines of like, without face-to-face engagements, like how are you building better partnership relationships?
So I would say multiple places, obviously in your work with your agencies and things that's the first place. But for the general audience I find LinkedIn has really stepped up their game with people posting best practices. I learn something new on LinkedIn almost on a daily basis. And then personally, I'm like, I follow Steve Jobs' advice of stay hungry, stay foolish. So I, in this madness of COVID, have also signed up with one of the Ivy Leagues to do a digital marketing course, and they're doing a really, really nice job virtually. And there's like 412 students, I think. So not only are the professors providing great best practices of things, but these 412 students from around the world, we're like learning who's doing what. And that has just blown my mind. I've had so much fun learning on that side.
So are you anonymous in that, or do they know who you are?
Oh, they know who I am. Yeah, it's absolutely. But it is super duper fun to learn what every company is doing, because there's even smaller companies around the world. Very, very cool things.
Very cool. And then I'll finish with one last question back to mine. I think that, everybody's learned so much about themselves, or something, like everyone I talk to has learned something interesting about themselves in the last 5 to 6 months. What have you learned that you didn't previously know about yourself?
Oh my gosh, it's a fabulous question. I think, and probably knew it about myself. I just didn't pause long enough to know. So I think what COVID has taught me is uh, before this, I used to live to work. I was go, 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 go. And with COVID, the chance to pause, reconnect, etc., I'm going to pivot to not living to work, but working to live. And which means I'm almost calling post COVID like the second innings in my career. We don't often stop, like those of us who've reached the top end of the executive spectrum, we don't often stop and pause and give back or help others. And seeing these statistics from USA Today and all, I was like, my God, there's going to be so many women that are going to need help. And during COVID, that's where I like spent a lot of my energy, and I hope like I can continue to spend that kind of energy to help others reach those same ambitions and goals. So carving out time to do that and focusing men and women, but I think predominantly I've been focused on helping a lot of women, and hopefully I'll leave a little mark in that.
I'm sure you'll leave a big mark. Just from today and talking to you prior, you know, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for
Same
letting
here.
me ask you questions.
Yeah,
No, you've been awesome. Thank you guys so much. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, thank you both so much for joining us. I know I'm not Lauren, but but I know I've talked and met you both, and it's been really great hearing from you again. And I'm really impressed, Kanan, that your son has not run behind you in the video, because I was even surprised that no one ran behind my mom during her session and my siblings, and we are pretty much adults.
So are you all
really
at the same
props to
house?
him.
Are you and your mom at the same house right now?
No, we're not. We're not.
Okay.
But my other siblings are all home, and I was really impressed with them.
Your mom was awesome, by the way. I did hear her
So,
speech.
I'm a really big fan. No, I'm really happy she could get involved, and it's really great. I mean, our Women in Marketing events are now, you know, a tentpole for our Brand Innovators virtual series. So it's really exciting to keep bringing, you know, women like both of you back and hear from you.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's a pleasure. Absolutely.
Thank you both so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
And a big thank you to all of our speakers today for such great insight. And it's amazing for someone like myself, who's a younger marketer, someone just starting off my career, to hear from such an amazing group of diverse female leaders. So I hope everyone enjoyed the event and will come back. And please join us on Tuesday at 1:00 Eastern for our special event of marketing innovation within the C-suite. And we're going to be joined by a number of chief marketing officers from Wells Fargo, Century 21 Real Estate, PayPal, and many, many more. So thank you all for joining, and hope to see you again really soon.